there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I've found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Karl Dunn, him, author of How to Burn a Rainbow, the first book about gay divorce. This week, our conversation is about upfront tuition funding, increased safety for women travelers in India, Pottery Barn's latest collection, and more. Let's get started. Karl, welcome to the show.
Bernadette, hey, thank you so much for having me on. Really
Karl,
appreciate it.
will you tell folks a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your
Sure,
book?
absolutely. Well, for over 2 decades, I was an advertising creative director, writer based, and I kind of checked out of that for about 6 or 7 years to be a full-time screenwriter in LA. But basically, I've had an entire life of writing, most of it in two different corporate worlds. And everything was going swimmingly. And then I started to get divorced. And I went looking for a book on same sex divorce when I was divorcing my husband in California, which began in 2017. And I could not find a book anywhere. I could barely find an article about it. So I
Mhm.
started keeping a video diary. A friend of mine, I was showing him some of the revelations and things that I was having as I was going through it. And he was like, y'all need to put this into a book, Queen. And here we are. And so that's how to Burn a Rainbow came to be.
I love that. Well, I am also a fellow gay divorcee. I was an early adopter of both gay marriage and gay divorce, so I can completely
Mm.
relate. And you're right, there was nothing, no resources. I had a lot of shame around it.
Yes. Oh my God, the shame of it. The shame of it was incredible. I was paralyzed with shame at the beginning of
Hmm.
mine. So I didn't do the first, probably most obvious things that I should have done, like reach out to people and ask for help,
Hmm.
because I couldn't even, conceive of the idea of telling people who'd been at our wedding 2 years before, like, hey, I'm getting divorced and I need a lawyer. Do you know anyone good?
Yeah,
Mm,
I felt really similarly. I didn't talk to really many people about it at all, and I just
mm.
felt like, for so many people, I was the first gay wedding that they went to, and here we are, like, splitting up, and it just felt like I was letting my family down, my community down, my clients, because I was a planner, so it was just
Yeah.
deluge of shame.
Yeah, yeah, and the
Mhm.
loss. Yeah, it was terrible. I went through those things, and I'd add this to the list, and maybe you've experienced it as well, is that the moment you have a wedding ring on your finger, this thing that none of us in our community probably ever thought would happen in our lifetimes,
Right.
the instant equality that comes with that is intoxicating.
Yeah.
You zip straight to the top of the social ladder. It is the penultimate act you can perform. Yeah, that and having children.
Yes.
As far as society, like the societies we all live in,
Mhm.
are concerned. And I loved it. Oh my goodness. I loved it so much, but I hated how much I loved it because it didn't come from in here. It came from here, like
Sure.
some, Green Lantern ring. But losing that was hard. That was really hard. Yeah, that was a rough
Yeah.
one.
I agree. I felt like I lost some part of my identity. Well, tell
Mm.
me, Karl, what's some of the wisdom of your gay divorce?
Wow. Well, what I would say, I think one of the biggest things for me is that I had lived a life that was, a little Peter Panish. Gay men, unless they really actively seek out having children, we never have that moment. And for most of my heterosexual male friends, that moment's come when their wives or girlfriends get pregnant for the first time. And I see this transformation where they go, oh my goodness, I'm an overgrown boy.
Yeah.
And in 9 months, I have to be a role model. Who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? What am I passing on? They have their crisis of identity. And I thought, well, I'm probably never going to have kids, but I could use this the same way. And that's what I did. I used my divorce to find out why I had one. And that was the start of the journey for me.
Mm.
Yeah, because in How to Burn a Rainbow, the divorce is definitely the inciting incident, and it's what drives a lot of the action. But the bulk of the story is a human being on the path trying to find themselves.
Right, and I think that's very relatable, right?
Mm,
We all have our stuff. And,
yeah.
and the inner work is the hard work, and so many of us avoid it.
Oof. Yes, I mean, I spent my entire life dating men who I expected the job I was giving them without telling them, they should just know, is to wave some magic wand and make all these dark things that I hate about
Mm,
myself go away instead of doing the work myself. And I think not even, definitely not consciously realizing that's what I was doing, which of course is an insane amount of pressure to put on any other human being to do. And they were maybe doing exactly the same thing to me. So yeah, it was really when I started on this, I thought, okay, if I'm going to get divorced, I am going to come out the other side of this thing a different human being to the one that began this journey, because I literally cannot do this to myself again. I can't go through this again, because we were comparing notes beforehand. And yours, I think, was fairly amicable. Mine was lawyers at 10 paces,
yeah,
body count. I mean, it was bad.
yeah,
And I don't blame my ex for that. That was the two of us. We made that little tango that we did together.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, how has it affected your career? I mean, you were a global creative director, right? And so what's the evolution? Because now I understand you're doing some DEI speaking. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, things really changed. I have to say also, anyone in corporate America who's listening, there is zero resources available for people going through divorces at work or the end of long-term relationships or separations, which is crazy considering how many other life events we have leave for. And this happens to 65% of employees at some point in their working career will experience something like this, but
Mhm.
it's filed under leave your personal life at home. Whereas, as you know, a divorce and the end of a relationship bleeds over every part of your life. So
Absolutely.
I did crash and burn rather spectacularly in my last full-time job, which, I mean, it just was, it went crazy. The job went crazy. My divorce went crazy. It was more than one human being could carry. So yeah, after that, I left America, middle of my divorce. I left, not sure if I was coming back. And I moved to Berlin, which is the city which is where I'm talking to you from today, I have a very long history with this city. I've been coming here for work for 20 years. So I started freelancing and I started writing the book, and I was going between here and the States, and that was a nice split. But when the book came out, people became, which took 6 years. I mean, that's another whole podcast, what it's like to write and publish a book, as
Sure.
you know.
Mhm.
But people became particularly fascinated by this story of the divorce bench, where in the vacuum of any support from my community, because we had no experience with it and my employers doing nothing, I found myself in the company of straight divorced men. And what what a life raft that was for me. I mean, it was incredible. Like, the last thing I expected to get out of my divorce was to lose my lifelong fear and apprehension towards heterosexual men, which I think
Mhm.
would probably ring true for most gay men my age.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, these men were incredible. And really, what I realized was happening at this bench was, we were from the mailroom to the C-suite. We were four religions, all different sides of the political divide, Americans and immigrants like myself, and we all were a team. We all got on together. We didn't necessarily agree about everything that was going on in the world, but our divorces and the supporting of each other going through it, because we knew what that was like,
Mhm.
was the most important thing. So it became this fascinating microcosm of DEI. We don't have to all love each other all the time. We don't have to sing kumbaya and sit around the campfire together, but we can treat each other with incredible respect and trust. This was the amazing thing. These men became not just they became not just my friends and advisors, they became like my closest inner circle.
Mm.
Really interesting. Was not at all expecting that. People who I'd previously, I mean, weeks before, considered, if not you know, benefiting from the system set up by my antagonists, than at least my antagonist as well. It was
Sure.
my antagonist. So, and yet here we were, brothers. It was like being in Fight Club.
And now you speak about that. That's really
I
amazing.
do.
Well,
Yes. I mean, we were a group of the most unlikely allies. And that's the talk I'm giving as a world of unlikely allies, breaking down what we did, how we did it, and how everybody could replicate this without having to go through a divorce to learn how to do it.
I love that. I love that. Well, like you, I have found a lot of joy since my divorce, and that was
Mm,
what I wrote about in the intro to this week's Five Things, was about the joy that I have found this summer, including in, I don't know about you, the music of Chapel Roan. Lots of joy there. Makes me feel like I'm
yes.
20 years old again. And I had a wonderful road trip with my son this summer. So I'm just sort of feeling like in the moment. And I'm wondering, what is something that you have experienced lately that's just brought you a lot of joy?
Actually, I would say it's learning from my partner,
Mm,
the man I'm dating, Eric. Eric has the most incredible ability to be so pleased by the tiniest things,
mm.
genuinely pleased, genuinely overjoyed, and I am a little bit of a hurrier. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now because I'm a writer, so I said it, so it's a word. I'm a bit of a hurrier through life. I'm often thinking of the next thing I'm going to do. I'm a bit
Mhm.
goal oriented, and I am endeavoring to learn this skill of his, where he literally can be just so happy by the smell of the breeze and how the wind is going through the trees. And yeah, so it's a it's a skill.
It
Yeah.
is. I am
Mm.
cultivating that as well on my morning dog walks without any
Ah,
devices.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, deviceless. Yes.
exactly, exactly. Well, let's get into this week's 5 things.
Yes.
The first story this week comes from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, which intentionally spotted local Black-owned small businesses at its Dempalooza vendor fair. And I love this
Yes.
because it uplifts businesses. It's an equity move, really.
Yes. It's fantastic. I mean, I love that the Democrats are doing this, and I love also the comment by the beekeeper, the black beekeeper that they feature in the article, Thad Smith, who's like, I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat, we're all here to like sell the things we love and meet each other and cooperate together. And I was like, that's a cool attitude. I like that they're fostering that. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it can be like something for everybody, however you vote. I loved that. I thought that was beautiful.
Exactly. It is beautiful, and it shows walking the talk. I mean, it just creates more opportunities, and it's just about giving folks access. And
Hmm.
access is
Yes.
quite a privilege, right?
It really is, and I like it when people who are very fortunate use their platforms to, well, give their platforms over for other people to use that they're trying to lift up, and then step into the background. Don't make it about them. Oh, look at this
Mhm.
great thing we did. They just kind of go, look at all these people. They're great. Like we'll be back later. Talk to them. I
Yeah.
think is yeah, it's great.
Exactly. All right, the second story comes from Pottery Barn, which
Mm.
expanded its accessible home collection, introducing 29 new pieces designed for people with disabilities. So these new items blend style with functionality, featuring integrated armrests, grab rails, and wheelchair-friendly designs. I love this because it offers people joy. I mean, it's
Yes.
great furniture can bring joy.
And there's nothing better than when you're using something and it works because it was built with you in mind.
That's
There's
right.
something so like you don't even, you'll probably never meet the person who made this, but you're like, thank you, person who created this. Thank you, people who, saw it through its production process and got it out here in the world. Because you don't realize until, I knew a guy, I met him a couple of times in San Francisco, and he was in a wheelchair and he was a coder. And apparently, he was I gather he was a genius coder because I went to his house one time and I was like, "Damn, this place is nice." He had a lot of stock options, but the entire house was designed for him.
Mm.
It's so interesting to walk into someone's kitchen who's in a wheelchair, and you're like, "Right, of course." Like you don't think about it until you're in the space, and he's
Mhm.
like spun around in his kitchen. And he goes, "I love my kitchen. I'm like, joy.
That's right.
This is all to his face. So I love it when, people like Pottery Barn, I think IKEA have also done a
Mhm.
program like this. Fantastic. Make everything more for everyone.
Exactly, and it doesn't and it can benefit everyone, right? Absolutely. Okay,
Hmm.
the third story this week comes from Indigo Airlines, which is based in India, and it now allows women passengers to choose seats next to other women. So they have over 2,000 flights a day. And the way this is set up is that there are pink icons where for seat selection apparently, and this is about growing concerns about women's safety while traveling in India. There are female only train cars that are common, but there have been lots of issues with harassment. And so this is a
Mm,
really smart solution.
it's a great idea. I was like, wow, Indigo, golf clap. That
Yeah.
is brilliant. What a brilliant idea. And I liked the way the UX works, where once you've put in your gender at the beginning when you're booking, the pink seats are only visible to other female passengers or
Mhm.
people who are going to book. I was like they really thought it through. They really
That's
thought it
right.
through. And even if you don't use it, I don't, I'm not a woman, and I may or may never fly Indigo Airlines. Just to know that someone's doing that, you think that's nice. Like that's some great corporate responsibility. I mean, of course, it always attracts the naysayers, and people start poking holes in it straight away. But nothing is perfect, but it's moving. It's moving in the right. Because when I heard that, I thought that's brilliant. I hope other businesses where they're experiencing problems like this can also adopt the same idea.
That's right. I mean, and imagine the customer loyalty. I mean, that's obviously just great business. So
Mm,
it's, I love the stories that I love are where there's wins all around. Same thing with Pottery Barn. I
mm,
mean, the customer loyalty there is
yes.
just it matters. So this isn't just about being accessible and inclusive. It is, but there's of course always got to be a business objective.
It's good business.
That's
It's
right.
just good business. Like good business, I think that people often will poke holes at things like this and be a little cynical about it being a business move. But any business who's doing its business well is keeping all of its customers happy
Yeah.
and making real efforts to do that. So this is bravo, bravo to the companies who are really trying to include everyone, to think about everyone. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, the next story is from New York City, which has a new relaxation and stress management program for transit workers who have been experiencing an increased number of violent assaults. And it's offering these workers classes and breathing exercises and meditation tools to help them manage anxiety in high pressure situations. I think this is a bit of a, I don't know, kind of a Band-Aid fix. Gotta gotta manage.
Okay, I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it because I was like, I don't want to be the wet blanket on this because this is good. This is a good thing they're doing for their employees. And as someone who's a fan of meditation and
Mhm.
yoga, I think wonderful that more people are tapping into it. However, and it's a big however, I honestly think this is a symptom of us not as a society, us not looking at what is the great reckoning that came out of COVID? What is the
Mm,
change in all of our behaviors that I mean, I see the desperation and anger of people everywhere. And then you've got these frontline public transport drivers
mhm.
who are copping the brunt of it. This is a great story, but I think the biggest story is why are we not looking at that? Because we're seeing it everywhere. I find it in myself, like if I'm like on a call and it's someone I'm speaking to, and I'm angry because I'm calling about something that I'm not happy with. I really have to check myself sometimes and go, don't go on a
Mm.
tizzy because there's no consequences to this. There's a human being on the other side of this phone who is, you know, attempting to get through their day and have some fun. So it's like, all right, let's solve the problem, but let's see how nice we can make the whole interaction ourselves. So I think, but there's something about us. I think we're a little unhinged since COVID.
The
You know what I
mindfulness
mean?
lessons should be to the customers as well as to
Yeah,
to
100%.
the
And instead of
workers.
being punitive, where it's like, let's catch them and jail them, it's more about why are we doing this? What is
Mm.
happening to us?
As a
Because we
society.
see it, we see it in restaurants, we see it on public transport. It's out in public everywhere. We will notice these outbursts in all of our cities.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's while I'm glad that they're doing that for their drivers and for their workers. I think we all need to have a little mirror moment.
Yeah.
Mm,
Absolutely. Mindfulness is it benefits everyone truly. All
mhm.
right. The fifth story this week comes from Train Technologies, which is a large HVAC company, heating and air conditioning. It has revamped its tuition assistance program to offer upfront funding for education, changing away from a reimbursement model. And that has impacted nearly 700 plus employees.
Wow,
It's and so people are taking advantage of this. They're getting
great.
degrees, they're getting additional certificates, and I mean, this is great. It's great for loyalty, it's great for retention, all of that.
Yeah, this is when I read this article, I thought this is it feels almost like a no-brainer that
Mhm,
if you reimburse people for taking these courses, why make them go and find all that money up front so they can take the course and then you're going to pay it anyway.
mhm.
Just pay it out at the beginning. Like it literally makes no difference to the company. So how nice that they've just shifted that because the enormous difference it makes for people is wonderful. I love the quote. Dave Regnery, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, the CEO, who had tried to study for an MBA and work a full time job. So he
Mhm.
lived it, he went through it himself. Said education has got the highest returns of any investment you'll make in your company. And I was like, ah, brilliant, 100%. And also, what I thought was interesting, even if someone, let's say he had not had to go through that, but had his MBA and all these things before he ever got that job and was never faced with working and studying and trying to find the money to study at the same time.
Mhm.
All it would take is for a different kind of CEO to walk down to the floor and go, "Hey, everybody who's studying, what's the biggest pain point here?" And they all would have said that. It's like, "Oh, yeah, you know what? 100%. That makes sense. I hadn't thought about that before." A question, a conversation, listening,
Mm.
and the change that's done. So I hope Dave's example is inspiring people who haven't lived it to
Show some
pop down to the other
curiosity.
floors, show some curiosity. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
show some
agree.
curiosity.
I agree. I
Mm,
mean, that's the idea with all of these stories every week is to find inspiration, things that you can test
mm,
out, and this is a perfect example of something that's really simple but very, very impactful. I mean, that's the
mm.
premise here, so thank you. Carl, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on
Yeah.
the show. How can folks get in touch with you?
Well, you can. I'm very easy to find. I am not camouflaged at all. So Karl Dunn, KarlDunn. That is my .com. That is me on Instagram. That is me on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find. And if you want to find my book, How to Burn a Rainbow, it's on all platforms that sell books, and yeah, available in paperback and also in ebooks.
It's a great book. I finished it,
Thank
which
you.
says a lot, so it's
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And this week's
Yeah.
call to action is to read this great article by Tom Garrity. Psychological safety should support DEI, not replace it. So we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, I
Folks,
read that. It's a good one. It's a
it
good one.
is. It is. Folks,
Mm.
if you don't already get the Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.